Welcome to Behind the Audition podcast with your host, Curt Hilton. Listen in on interviews with voiceovers, filmmakers, producers, animators, and much more. Curt, a voice actor himself, will give insider tips to the business, talk with guests about how they got into the business, and be sure to stay tuned to the end of the podcast when he challenges his guests with a pop-up audition. Now it's time for Behind the Audition podcast. Here's Curt Hilton.
Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. Today, I spoke to the rock star and voice actor, Jaret Reddick. Jaret is known mostly as a lead singer of the amazing group Bowling for Soup. We spoke how the band got started, how some of their music is in motion pictures, landing the voice of Chuck E. Cheese, his successful podcast Jaret Goes to the Movies, and how the song Stacy's Mom was originated. So sit back and enjoy another episode of Behind the Audition podcast. All right, it's that time to welcome to the show the one, the only from Bowling for Soup and Jaret Goes to the Movies. Welcome to the show, Jaret Reddick. How you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you? I'm glad we're finally getting to meet.
Yeah, man, this is exciting for me. Big fan of yours, big fan of your show, your music, and I'm glad you're able to take some time today. You know, you're a busy guy, and thank you for being on the show.
Man, good to be here. Absolutely.
First question, how's Texas? I know you're down in Texas. How's things down there?
We're good. Texas is, as you probably know, we just sort of pretend we're our own thing. We're our own thing. And it's people are just sort of like, there's a very large part of the population that just act like nothing's going on in the world and just like live their life, which can be super annoying. Like I'm certain that that a good portion of like the mask Karen videos, where the woman just wants a coffee, but she doesn't want to wear the mask or whatever. I'm certain that most of that's from where I live, because that's pretty much the way people are. But we're good, man. It's, it's COVID thing's kind of a bummer because obviously, we've lost some people and we just had it here in the house and all of that. But at the same time, just trying to stay positive and make it through all of this insanity.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that everybody in the house is doing well. That's good to hear. I guess I'll start the show off by saying this is so funny because the song Stacy's Mom, it does mean a lot to this family because ironically, my wife's name's Stacy.
Okay. All right.
And so Stacy's mom. And so that's when I first heard you guys, but how cool is that?
Well, I have to make it even cooler for you, and I'm not joking. And this is maybe one of the funniest things about my career. That is not our song. Stacy's Mom is actually by a band called Fountains of Wayne. And for some reason, for 10 years, we've been given credit for it. And I mean, and you're not even remotely even close to being the first person podcaster, journalist who everybody just thinks it's our song. So I even do a thing. We play it now. We recorded it.
Yeah.
Because it had been, people were coming to see us and wearing shirts that just said, "I'm Stacy's mom." And like, they'd come up to us and be like, "Hey, I'm Stacy's mom. Hey, congratulations." And so finally it was just like, guys, let's just record this thing. And we recorded it. We did 8,000 downloads on iTunes the first month. And I was just like, I am a freaking genius. And so now we play that song at shows and I will go at the beginning of every show. Now, these are people, for the most part, 85% of people who come to our shows have seen us before. And I will ask every time, who's here to hear our huge hit, Stacy's Mom? And the audience goes, "Ah."
Oh my
and
God.
I'm like, that is not our song. So common mistake, but that's not us.
That is hilarious. So when you guys got together as a band, were you guys all friends? Tell me about how you guys formed your band, like when it all started.
Yeah. So I had known Chris for a long time because his brother was my age, and he started running this little coffee shop in our little town and basically had bands come play 2-3 nights a week. And so everybody was in our own little bands that would come through there. I mean, mine was like, theirs were they would just form a band and play like that weekend because it was his spot. So he and our original drummer Lance and our original bass player Eric had a thing. And my band was like super serious. Like, I mean, we rehearsed for like a year before we ever even played a show. We already had merch, and our first show sold out, and took it really seriously. But that's where we all met, and just became fast friends. And when my band disbanded, because my bass player was heading to college in a different town, I knew that I wanted to be in a band with Eric. Lance and I were already in a band together, and Chris just seemed the obvious choice. And here we are 26 years later, me and Chris, the last guys, the last two original dudes, but our drummer has been in the band since 98. So,
Wow.
We don't really consider him the new guy anymore.
That's awesome. I know I'm not in the music industry. I do the voiceover stuff. I always am curious, like what it feels like when you get that first record deal. Is that like something that's unexplainable to feel like when you get that offered from somebody, or are you nervous because what if this is some kind of, I'm going to get ripped off? Because back in the 90s, you heard a lot of bands getting ripped off, and like you thought they were rich, but actually they were poor. I mean, were you scared?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. The ones that did it in the 90s ended up making a shitload of money. They're the last frontier. It's like when we do shows with like Tonic or Eve 6 or those bands, they're always like, man, we feel bad for you guys, because we're the ones that got signed, and then Napster and LimeWire and all that stuff started happening, and we were the first generation not to have huge hits and not sell a shitload of records.
Right.
It was kind of one of those things. So we had been together 6 years when we signed our deal. And yeah, definitely it was exciting more than anything. I mean, I think you just as a kid think, probably like you in your line of work. I mean, I'm the voice of Chuck E. Cheese. I mean, when I got that role, I was just like, well, geez. I mean,
that's awesome.
I freaking did it, I mean,
yeah.
And so you're kind of like that when you get a record deal too, but there's just so many variables. There's so much luck. There's so many relationships that go into all of it or whatever. You sense the downside of it really quickly. And I'm not jaded or anything. I think there's a place for record labels, and all in all, through the 9 years we were on Jive, I would say that for the most part, it was a good experience for both of us. But what you're not prepared for is you think that because, bands in the 80s and 90s, signed that big deal, and all of a sudden you just have money, and you don't have to worry about anything anymore. That's not what happened. I mean, we got a little bit of money that paid off our credit card bills that we had run up trying to stay on the road. And then we were basically at zero again. And, you're just out there plugging away and, on tour and just trying to get people to come to your shows. And quite frankly, they don't just automatically show up, So, the first couple of years of being on a label were brutal. It was really, really hard. And I could definitely see how a band not having as much fun as we do, would not make it through that part. Once 2003 hit, our second record had been out 6 months. Girl the Bad Guys Want got nominated for a Grammy and started to hit really big on pop radio. Then things, changed, and all of a sudden, okay, now we can pay rent, and and we got on a tour bus for the first time, and things like that. So I think the question was, you're asking is you think everything's gonna okay, we did it, that's the end, that's really just the beginning, is when you sign that deal. Really everything else was just working your way up to that, and it's like you got the gig, and now you've got to get out there and re-earn it, so to speak.
Now you brought up the Napster and LimeWire and all that. Today we have, Pandora, Spotify. What do you guys think about them? Do you think they're actually helping bands, or I don't know what bands think about this platform. Back when it came out, a lot of bands were like, I don't want my music on it. I know Prince was a big guy of not having his music on streaming services, and now of course it is. But what do you guys feel about streaming services nowadays?
I mean, so I'm probably not of the norm. Since I'm a songwriter and an artist, I get my percentage is a little microscopically larger than someone who is just not doing their own songs, or somebody who's just a writer or whatever. I personally like it. I mean, I think it's taken all of the control and put it in the fans' hand. And, I understand that we're in a constant negotiation of what the rate should be and stuff like that. The ones that are making the most noise, unfortunately, and I don't mean to sound, there's no arrogance to this. There's nothing. I'm just stating facts.
Sure.
The majority of the people who have a problem with, say, something like Spotify are getting, 5,000 listens a month and wondering why they're not getting a huge check. And quite frankly, that's, to me, is laughable, because you're not working. You're not going out there and busting your ass. If you're expecting to make a living in the music business, this is a 24-hour a week job. Don't 24-hour a day job. Sorry.
I know what you meant.
24 hours a week. That's a 24-hour a day job. As you know, you and I have been trying to hook up. It's always something with me. I work and I spend time with my family. Those are my only two things that I have in my life. And, so again, I don't want to bash on those, but those are the same artists that are like, well, I should get paid $500 to play this show. And how many people can you bring? Well, nobody. That's your job. You're the client. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Mindset. So to be fair, when we were selling, 1 million records we've sold almost 3 million, I guess, at this point. And we never got a check for that because it's all monopoly money. I mean, we could go on for days about how the record business works, but
sure,
we weren't getting a check from our record label ever, because essentially they can just create more costs in promotion or videos or whatever. You don't get anything. Well, now, we get checks,
That's
because
awesome.
our music is going straight to the listener, and that there's no middleman anymore. So, and again, it's not life-changing money, but it's way more than it was, so, I'm a fan. And also just as a, I see a lot of bands on, I'm pretty active, as you know. And so I'm a member of a lot of different groups on Facebook and things like that. I'm going to shut my dogs up in a minute after.
No worries.
I am, of the shit. I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
We're talking about the platforms and selling records, and
they get on there or whatever. They're like, well, I just spent $10,000 on my demo, and how am I going to make that back when all they pay is 1,000th of a cent or whatever? And it's like, if you literally got into this business thinking that you were going to go spend some money, make a record, and put it out on the internet, and that's it, you just make your money back, you have 100% picked the wrong business.
That is awesome.
Like our 25,000 records out of the back of our van a year. That was what the late 90s were for us. We were making more money as a bar band than we were after we got signed because we hustled. So, again, I think it's great as a research tool. I think you have to be on Spotify. To be honest, if a band that approaches me and you're like, hey, can you listen to this? Is it on Spotify? I mean, I don't have a CD player. I don't. There's nothing in my house that can play a CD.
Right.
Curt, hold this next question.
Absolutely.
You can leave this in. It'll be a funny yell here.
Okay, cool. He's going to go tell his dogs. I love it. I love it. So speaking of Spotify and Pandora and all that, so we had a birthday party for our son, and he had a big Scooby Doo party, and your guys' band came on the playlist, Scooby Doo playlist. And I wanted to talk about your music and movies. How does that happen? Is it they just go to a service and they pay for it and you know nothing about it until you get a residual check? Or do they have to ask your manager's permission to put your movie or your song in the movies?
So it all basically boils down to two sides of each song. So there's somebody owns the master recording, which is, just the actual recording of it, which is it's in most cases the label, between, up until 2009, our Jive owns those masters. After that, we own all of our masters. And then there's the publishing side of it, which is, the writers and stuff. So, they essentially go in and get permission, and they work out a usage, which is, here's how much money we have to spend for this. And it's either a yes or a no. That was the one downside of it, because it does seem like we got a lot of placements, and we did during the heyday. But that is one negative side of being on a huge label, was they kind of held songs hostage. That we weren't getting like MTV, Real World and stuff like that, because they didn't have enough money to put into the song, and it wasn't really worth Jive's time to do that. And I get it; it's a business thing, but at the same time, it's like I think we probably would have had a bigger opportunity to even be more widespread had they been a little bit more open to that. But Scooby Doo, but each one of them, to answer your question more specifically, each song is a different set of circumstances. Scooby Doo, the music supervisor, came to us and they said, "Hey, Tim Armstrong wrote this song and we love it, but we really kind of want more of a, like a more poppy band to do it." And Tim was down. And so that song, Here We Go, that's in Scooby Doo, was written by Tim Armstrong of Rancid, and who writes a ton of pop stuff that you would never know unless you just follow him. But, he writes songs for Pink and, all of that. But anyway, so that's how that one happened. And then, there's Freaky Friday. It's a similar situation. And then tons of theme songs and things like that. Whereas like, can you write a song for this? Or, and then there's ones that you miss, like Shrek 2 had High School Never Ends in, and we ended up getting the trailer, which was awesome. But then, of course, the movie comes out and the scene pops up and it's "Somebody Once Told It," and you're just like, "Damn you, Smash Mouth!" Those dudes literally, that's the standard, right? I'm sure that there's, as well as I do. Like when we do voice stuff, you get a, sound similar to this or this kind of texture or whatever. For years, we're looking for a song a la Rockstar by Smash Mouth. So crazy.
That is really crazy. And so you guys got to be on TRL too, right?
We did. Yeah, we got to be on TRL. We got to be on TRL in UK and Europe and stuff like that, which is, at the time.
Oh my gosh, it was huge.
So huge. And, it just, those are those pinch yourself moments, right? Like you wouldn't think, it's little things. I mean, and not that that's little, but it's just like stuff like that where you're just like, this is crazy. You're standing over Times Square, and that there's millions of people watching, and you're just like, we just started writing fart joke songs. I can't believe this,
Yeah, well, and I see Carson Daly on the Today Show, and I still think back to TRL days. I used to be, I started out before being a voiceover, being a DJ in a club in St. Louis, and I used to watch TRL for the music, because sometimes the new music coming out, the best hits coming out, and TRL had that platform and the artists coming out that, that was like every day at 3:00 TRL. It was like the coolest thing to watch.
Yeah, it was the up, and, they always had the latest people on to come in and say hello. And, it was, definitely one of those things, Carson was always great to us. We did his night show, I think twice. And, always very pleasant. MTV actually as a whole were always very, very gracious. You would think that they wouldn't be. And we weren't a big MTV band, actually. We were a VH1 band. But, you always got treated really, really nice, in those situations.
And going back to that time, ironically, I had a video game, NHL game you guys were on. And I remember hearing that game all the time, or that song all the time. And I just like, oh my gosh, that's these guys. So that's pretty cool. We got to hear that. And switching over to your podcast, Jaret Goes to the Movies. That is so fun to listen to. And I just enjoyed it. And tell us a little bit more about that, how that podcast came to life.
Yeah. So, I had a podcast back in 2009, like, and it's one of those kick yourself things, because had I kept going with it and taken it seriously, it would probably be huge now. Not that Jaret Goes to the Movies, or I have another one called Rockstar Dad. Those are doing awesome. But, I was really early in that world and just doing it to Bowling for Soup fans, but it was really catching on. But I just really didn't understand how big of a platform this that we're doing right here was going to be. It just didn't register. So, you know, when I met my wife, her dad's best friend. So as I was telling you before the interview, my wife is 18 years younger than me. Her dad is about my age and and also plays guitar and
That's awesome
and stuff. So his best friend was in his band, and he was a big podcast guy. And so he was always like, dude, you got to do a podcast. I'm like, I kind of already do one, whatever. And he was like, no, you do like a real podcast where like you have a topic and you just and I really didn't understand where he was headed with it. And then he was like, man, just like, what's something that you like? I mean, I speak movie. So my friends will tell you like everything that I say pretty much comes from
the movie quotes.
Like yeah. And my wife just, again, once a day. Okay. What's that from? And so he knew my love for movies, and he was just like, let's just do something about movies and I'll help you and we'll do this. And, at first, and his name is Rich. He was like, man, I'll do all the work. And, and that's been 5 years ago. Rich is no longer on the show, but we've, evolved into my wife joining the cast, and then replacing him was the guy from down the street, from down the bar down the street that used to host trivia. We just thought he was funny. And then
that's awesome.
The producer that signed on really early on. And now during COVID, one of our neighbors, who's our really good friend, started coming in, and now she's on the show. And so, it's evolved from just being specifically about the movie to more about just like our lives and just funny observational humor, things like that. And then we sprinkle the movie on it. We sort of let the movie drive us into areas of conversation. And man, we have a lot of fun. We do it live on Twitch and YouTube when we record it, but really the audio is what is really successful. And man, like I said, it's nuts. We're, like 180 something episodes in.
That's crazy. I had the pleasure to be the voice of the intro to 5 Questions. And that is probably one of my most requested voiceovers is a game show host.
Yeah.
And when I was talking to a fellow voiceover, he's like, man, you got to do that game show voice. And I'm like, yeah, but it's kind of, in the voiceover world, it's called, it's game show throw up or whatever they call it, some kind of name they give it, or puke game show voice. That's what they call it. Cause everybody thinks they can do it, but I've actually sold so many voiceovers with that voice. I think it's a certain one you got to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it's,
well, just to tell your listeners, I mean, so the way that I get to that kind of stuff is I go to Fiverr, and I mean, I've started making videos, but I use a lot of voiceover stuff, because I would do a lot of it myself, but it's just, I think it's better. And you just nailed it. I mean, like you really did. It was like, I want like the 70s game show, over the top silly. And so 5 Questions is a thing. I actually stole it from Craig Kilborn back when he used to do the Daily Show. He used to just do 5 questions and they were just random questions. I started out just doing that. And then it ended up being a bit where I would do it about the movie. And then it became this deal where now we actually have people on our show who are supporters on Patreon, and they compete and they actually win stuff. And so it's a big part of our show. And like I said, season 3 started and we rebranded, and now you're the intro every week on 5 Questions.
Well, I got to owe my dad credit to that one, because he's the one that used to do that voice. He's just as crazy as I am, and I would get in trouble. I don't know if it was like this in your household, but I'd be like, I'm not going to do that, Dad. He's like, yes, you are. I'm like, no, I'm not. You better, or you'll be grounded. Haha. He turned it into funny stuff. And I have that song in my head. And so I owe that voice to him. But it's, I guess before we do my fun game show challenge, my audition challenge, I want to know with your podcast, what's your 5 all-time favorite movies? Like ones that you like, you're like walking around the house doing stuff and it comes on and you just stop what you're doing, you sit down, you watch.
Yeah. So I'm an 80s guy. I grew up in the 80s, and I mean, I think like movies that make me full on just cry laughing is what I really go to the most. Yes. But I would say if I were to pick 5 off the top of my head, Real Genius would be would probably be my favorite. Arthur, the original with Dudley Moore.
Oh yeah.
And then we change it up a little bit. Pulp Fiction, and then Reservoir Dogs, and then I guess fifth would probably be one that I can't just Super Bad. Actually, Super Bad, and I keep going Anchorman, but
Yeah. No, that's fine. That's it.
Is definitely the one where like it doesn't matter. Like if I'm flipping, I click on that, and then if I want to decide to watch something else, I do. But like that one's like, okay, well this is on, and I don't watch a ton of TV, but my wife and I do art and stuff like that at night sometimes, and Superbad is like the go-to. Just put that on and have it in the background, and
Absolutely. I have those movies. I guess my one would be Goodfellas. I like Goodfellas. And I think I when I messaged you that one day, remember that movie Heavenly Kid? It's
of course. Yeah.
That movie nobody knows about. And there's one back in the day. Have you ever done Hollywood Nights on your show yet?
No, great one. So those ones I have to be careful because sometimes I will pick an obscure movie like that and it's not available anywhere. But
wow,
I should see if Hollywood Nights is out there because Hollywood Nights was such a good one. There's another one that was similar to that called Midnight Express.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That was really, really good. It had Nancy McKeon in it, I think, which from Facts of Life, but that one was, they're just these over the top silly movies that,
yes.
We as kids, could rent them and at the video store and they said shit and showed boobs. Like it was like, and those are those kind of movies. But Hollywood Nights is a fantastic. That's a great one. That would be a fun one to go back and do if it's available anywhere.
Between that one and Johnny Dangerously, those two are like the old ones that know about. And I love those. And I guess one more question, if you don't mind. The Chuck E. Cheese.
But Johnny Dangerously, we were doing that one.
Oh, you did? Okay.
But it's not available anywhere. It's not on any of the streaming services. So we were gonna that, and the problem is we can get it, but we need our audience to be able to watch it too, so that they.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully, that's one that just magically appears at some point because that movie is just every line is hilarious.
Oh, I didn't know they did that. The last question, because I was going to ask you to go back to the Chuck E. Cheese. How did you land the Chuck E. Cheese gig? Because that actually is something I definitely want to talk about.
Yeah. So Chuck E. Cheese had been using the same guy for 20 years, I guess. And the guy before that, 20 years. And they were going into a rebrand situation. And the marketing firm that they hired was local here in Dallas. And they had, they'd drawn up this new Chucky, and he was a rock star and he could sing, and he, there was an energy about him. And I was doing improv comedy here in Dallas, and the dudes that landed that account were also improv guys that had seen me do improv. And they're just like, man, the dude from Bowling for Soup is like this improv comedian. He can do voices. And he obviously, sings. And so that one is a wacky one. They put together a reel of me, pitched to me. I got the job, but I didn't know. I went in May of that year. I thought I was auditioning. We were going through all these scripts, and I was doing these different kinds of Chuck E. Cheese. And still, I had no idea what he was going to sound like at the time. So it was all very, it's a little bit of a mind F, because I wanted to do a good job, but I hadn't spent a lot of time, on a mic really getting him right. And, but as I was leaving, they were like, okay, that's great. Yeah, we'll do this again about 8 weeks for the next thing. And I'm just like, my manager calls and he's just like, hey, how did the audition go? And I go, well, I think I just cut commercials actually. And we didn't even have a contract. So, it was awesome. Very super organic and just one of those things, and I'm still him, and we've gone through 2 or 3 different advertising agencies and all kinds of different changes to the company, but I feel good about about being Chucky for a long time to come.
Heck yeah, being an 80s person is very nostalgic. I still think of Chuck E. Cheese, skee ball, and the video games and all that stuff. That's very cool.
Yeah, big part of my childhood too.
Absolutely. Well, it's that time. It's time for the audition challenge.
Okay.
Now, basically, I sent you a chat, and I did this challenge because you did on your show, you did Son-in-Law, which is one of my all-time favorite movies too. And this is going to be a movie trailer to a sequel. And go ahead, you can take your time, read that script, and do it in a voice, whatever you choose of this script.
All right. So I read, when I read Coming This Summer, I read sort of like the age-old movie voice, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably where I would hear this, right? Like,
yeah.
Coming this summer, one man, one farm. Over 20 years ago, he became the son-in-law. Now he is the father-in-law. He's back, buddy.
Was awesome. Man, you are awesome. And before we let you go, what motivation would you give to those wanting to start a band, get their music out there, be a voiceover, run a successful podcast? What advice would you give to those to those listeners?
Enjoy yourself. Starting any of those three things that you listed, and and hoping to make a living at it, or to be, have it as a career, it's all very, very difficult. So enjoy what you're doing and do it with passion, and and then celebrate little victories along the way, and that's what I would say. It's not everything I do hits it out of the park, but everything that I do, I enjoy. So even some of the side bands that I do, and about to start another podcast, so this will be 4. And so, wow. But they can't not everything is going to be as successful as the next thing or whatever. So if you just do things that you love, just, make sure that it's adding to the quality of your life and not taking away, because again, I don't want to be a downer, but the music business is in shambles, and it is such a struggle right now. And it's so much about more than just writing great songs. And voiceover, as when you and I were doing this 10 years ago, it was a pretty small pond, and now A-listers are doing it. And so it's just like, okay, I'm against Charlie Day every single audition, cause it's like, that's who I sound like when I talk. And so, and then podcasts, obviously it's a big pool, but with social media and things like that, if you do it and you do it right, there's definitely success to be had out there. So, like I always say, just enjoy what you do, man, because life really is short.
I love it. I love value. I think value, everybody just thinks they could do stuff. They can do this, do that. But what you said, value is the most important to anything you do. If you bring value to anything, then I think you'll be very successful. I appreciate everything you've done. I love the show. Thanks for bringing entertainment during the pandemic. Thanks for bringing wonderful music. Like I told you earlier, when you come to Raleigh, I'll come see you, come say hi, and just thank you so much, everybody. Jaret Reddick, thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Thanks for listening in on Behind the Audition podcast, made possible by Hilton Productions. If you need a male or female voiceover, contact us at hiltonproductions.com. Hilton Productions, let our voices do the selling.